Hello and welcome to the Track live stream studio. I'm your host Teppo Isperia Suominen, and with me today is Angel Leigh McCoy, our guest of honor. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
It is so nice to be here.
Second day of Trackon, how are you feeling? How has the weekend been for you?
It has been so exciting the whole weekend. I've talked to so many people, and all of them Guild Wars fans. It's been really great.
Okay.
And TrackCon has been treating me with such amazing hospitality.
Of course, it's great to have you here.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I prepared a lot of questions. Let's see if I can go through my notes. But you've been credited with RPG industry work since the early 90s. I found the year 1994, but we discussed that as early as 1992 is when you've begun. So quite a few years of work. And in the 90s, you did work for almost all of the big boys back then, Wizards of the Coast, and White Wolf, I believe, as well, and a lot of the others.
FASA, I worked for FASA.
Yeah.
I worked for various different companies, different games.
Yeah.
It was how I made my living. It was one of the ways I made my living.
What was it like back then? You worked on a lot of different projects, of course. It might have been a bit of a jump from scene to scene at times. So what was it like back then?
It was crazy and fun and lots of long hours just writing. It was quite good. I loved freelancing. There's always the scary aspect of it, that once one project is done, you don't know if the next one is coming, and so that's scary. But in a way, that trained me to not worry so much about having a full-time job all the time.
Yeah. And you made it through fine.
I did. Yes, I did. And working with all the different companies was absolutely amazing. The tabletop companies at that time, I only say that because I don't know what they're like now, but at that time there was a boom of tabletop role-playing, and everybody was playing and everybody was having a great time role-playing. And the companies were like White Wolf was this big rock star company, right? And there were parties, and I was young enough at that time to enjoy the parties, the crazy just rock and roll parties that we had.
This is an interesting aspect of role-playing culture, because it's not usually maybe referenced as a rock star style of thing, but especially White Wolf back then.
White Wolf especially was, yes. Yeah, they were all those developers were just the coolest thing that ever lived, and being a young woman, a young writer, getting to meet them and hang out with them and drink with them, and all of that was it was just like the little country mouse going to the big city, and it was great.
Great. What IPs did you actually work with for White Wolf, for example, back then? I was thinking I might have played something of yours back then that I didn't even realize.
You probably did. I worked on the core products for some of them.
Okay.
And so if you played Changeling, you definitely read some of my stuff.
Okay. Actually, it's my
Vampire.
favorite. Changeling's my favorite from World of Darkness.
Is
probably.
It? Yeah,
yes. Fae are just
mine too.
It's so interesting. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, but moving on from the 90s onto this millennia.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, you were on board with Microsoft and Xbox.com as a wireless angel, and you did other work for them as well, I believe.
I was initially hired on at Microsoft to translate, to be in charge of translating their international website for their Magic the Gathering and their products, right? And so because of my language background, which in college I studied French literature, they hired me for that. And all I wanted was just to get a job there, right?
Okay.
Because that's how you get your foot in the door.
Yes.
And so you use whatever skills you have to sell yourself to the company you want to work for. And it worked for me. Right. So I was in charge of organizing all the translations for this new website they were building, and this new international site, and that was very exciting. And then at one point, they had a designer position open in their R&D department, for Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
and I applied,
Okay.
and they hired me for that. So then I just moved laterally over to the other department,
Okay.
and I was writing for D&D, for Forgotten Realms specifically,
All right.
which was amazing.
So all kinds of things. And then on Xbox.com, you wrote as Wireless Angel, I think. Was this your...
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That was your question.
No,
And I
it
went,
was actually fine.
To...
No. I actually skimmed over the previous question, which you answered.
Great.
Which was good. But yeah, after that...
I had that stuck in my head.
Was it after or during that you began to write for Xbox.com?
It was after.
Yes.
After they laid me off at Wizards of the Coast, then I went to Microsoft, and I was hired as a writer there.
Yeah.
And I was working on Microsoft Game Studios websites.
Yeah.
And so I was writing review articles, I was writing the actual content for game websites, and a lot of that was very creative, which was awesome. And then as Wireless Angel, I was writing reviews, basically, or game write-ups on the games that were coming out for the Xbox console. Yeah.
So, so was it from Microsoft that you moved to Arena.net?
Yes. So Microsoft, the department I was working in, they decided to shut that down.
Yeah.
And so they laid me off too.
All right.
And it was during that process that Bobby Stein, who was the lead writer at ArenaNet at that time, called me and asked if I would like to interview. And I knew Bobby. I had known Bobby for years.
Yeah.
I had initially met him when he first moved to Seattle.
Okay.
And then he and I worked together also at Microsoft.
Ah.
And so he called and said, you know, hey, I've got a position. Would you like to interview? So it was a gift.
And you've been there since 2007.
Yes.
So
yeah.
10 years.
Yeah, 10
of
years.
ArenaNet.
20% of my life.
Yes. So, ArenaNet, with them you've mostly or only been working with Guild Wars 2?
Yes, only Guild Wars 2. I was hired on specifically at the very beginning of the Guild Wars 2 project to be writer support for that. Yeah, and so I worked on a lot of the main game. There were 4 or 5 of us at the time who were writing. And more added on later, obviously. It's such a big game.
It is. It is now that it is. It's huge.
Yeah.
And it keeps on getting bigger.
That's right.
Can you name, out of the base game, any specific parts that would be written specifically by you? Some areas or storylines that you could point out?
From the original game?
Or from the current game as well, of course, if you...
Okay. That's always hard to answer because there's so very much.
Yeah, it's always a kind of a community effort with the teams.
There's a lot of ambient content that I did.
Okay.
The one that comes specifically to mind is in Radasum, there's a young Asura girl who's going out on a date.
Ah, yes.
And her dad is very jealous, and so he's trying to, you know, figure out who this young man is that's going to be taking his daughter out on a date.
Yeah.
We really wrote so much of it, so much of it. There's a scene in Lion's Arch where there's some kids who are playing and pretending to be Destiny's Edge.
Ah, yes.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have the... They go, if you're Marjorie, then you have to give me a kiss. Are they those kids?
Yes.
Yes, I remember them. You always hear them when you're hanging out by the bank.
Yeah.
They skim by there, and then one of them just runs away. It's these kinds of ambient scenes I really like because they kind of give life to the world itself.
Yeah. If you don't hear them too often.
Yeah, it's of course for example, the guide of Lion's Arch, when you've heard him like 50, 100 times, he kind of gets boring after a while.
Oh, sure.
Like, oh, wait, there's the scene again. Well, but
you tend to tune it out, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah, if you've
Mostly
heard it.
You do. Yeah, so you've been with Guild Wars 2 since the beginning.
Correct.
And it's moved on quite a lot from the beginning. For example, Lion's Arch is a whole different town now.
Yeah.
It's a new city. So the living world started back in don't actually remember the year when Living World Season 1 came out, but it was...
It was immediately after the launch of Guild Wars 2, so I think it was probably, I may be getting this wrong, so forgive me, 2012?
Yes, I'm thinking 2011, 2012 as well,
Yeah.
so around those times. But the world has been changing since the start. What's it like to write an MMO with hundreds of thousands, millions of players that changes for everybody at all times? Is it hard for a writer to try to create a kind of a living world escape for everybody involved? What's it like?
It requires special skills, and you have to have a good connection with fans. You have to listen to them, and over the years I've learned that the best way to focus on things is to focus on small areas. So if you have an atmosphere, a certain atmosphere in a small area, then some players will find it and some won't, and that'll support them. The real challenge is making sure that all the players see the important story moments.
Yes.
And so we've developed over the years some technical ways that we do that, guiding players to the places they need to be with the little green splat over the head or whatever. And that's very important. And you have to especially pay attention to that.
Yes.
And then everything else just sort of builds itself around those things. If we have to deliver a lot of lore in order for the player to understand what's going on, we try to do that in a more spread out sort of way, so that they get it in different places. We rely a lot on players talking to each other to tell each other where things are, and to relay lore to each other, that sort of thing.
It's always a thing with MMOs that a lot of the game culture comes from the players themselves.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Players are critical.
Yes. All right. Well, I did not have the option of playing through Living World Season 1 due to personal reasons fully. So I missed some of it since it's not replayable anymore. But I will focus more on seasons 2 and 3 and Heart of Thorns in my questions because I know those better. But especially with Living World Season 2, you changed a lot of the world during the season with the Morgemoth tendrils spawning into different places and changed the world itself.
Yeah.
What was it like to create a situation like that where the people who have the Living World content or are able to play it at the time know why these things are happening, and then you have the players who are just starting out or whatever, and they just see that all of a sudden, like right outside of Salma Fort, there's tendrils coming out of the fort is on fire, and okay, what happened here?
And they have no idea what's going on.
For me, actually, I went through Salma Fort right after the scene had changed. I remembered what it was like. I had not played Living World Season 2, and then I just enter the area, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? What has happened? So, how did you tackle this kind of because you must have known that this would happen to players and this could be an issue for some of them. So how did you take this on as a writer and a writer team?
So the team made a conscious decision to do that, and we did a lot of talking about it because we realized how this would impact some players, that some people might be confused. But our process was that we wanted the players who knew what the content was going to be or was being as they were playing it, to actually have an impact outside of the little area that they were playing in.
Yes, the story events.
Exactly.
Yes. To feel a change in the world.
Yes, And then for the players who hadn't gotten that far yet, we thought, well, the world changes, and they may not always know. Like you and I don't always know what's going on out in the world, right?
And big changes might happen just outside of our scope.
Exactly. And so what we viewed it as sort of presenting them as a mystery that would help them or be more interested in playing on to see, well, what does this mean? What's going on in my world? And hopefully That's how it felt.
For me, it worked. After I found out, I was like, okay, these tendrils keep on popping out, and I knew of the dragon lore, so I was like, okay, it's probably Mormoth, but I got to pick up Living World Season 2 to find out why here, why this, what's going on.
Yay! Well, then it had the intended effect.
Yeah, so it worked just as you wanted, at least for me.
Good.
Wait, yes, okay, and. For the players that were a part of the Living World seasons as they were happening, so these were your core focus during the writing process. So you wanted them to feel like there was a change going on.
Yeah.
And well, it's a thing that's been implemented more into MMOs lately. World of Warcraft adapted it, I think, around the same time as Guild Wars 2 had the Living Worlds rollout. And other MMOs after, but it was not a thing when you began thinking it out. It might be it's been in some games that I never touched myself.
Sure.
But not a big thing, not something that people did in their games.
Yeah.
How did you come to the idea, or where did it come from that you wanted to create a world that changes in an MMO during play? Because classically MMOs have been rather static, even with player interaction.
Yeah.
So how did you come to this sort of writing decision that you would want to make a world that changes?
Yeah, I believe, and again I might be wrong, but I think I'm pretty sure that the idea originated with Mike O'Brien, who's the company head. And his goal, I believe, was to just have ongoing content that would keep players coming back and keep them engaged and keep the story ongoing to sort of help build community, which is very important to ArenaNet. Our community is our #1 priority, right? And if the story is ongoing, then it won't stagnate. And we never want it to stagnate. That would just be death. Death to an MMO if it stagnates.
Yes, of course.
Right?
If you've seen all of the content, then there's not really much to go on.
Exactly.
Unless you have that player core that you want to play with. But even with that, you're still doing the same things over and over and over again.
Exactly, yeah. And it was very ambitious when we first started Living World because of the pace that we undertook. And we had never done anything like that before. So we had a lot of lessons to learn, and we did learn them. We learned a lot of lessons.
The content has changed a lot since Living World 1 to Living World 3.
Oh yes, very much so, yeah.
Okay, so we've had 3 seasons of Living World now. One big expansion, adding a whole new area, a whole new storyline. And another big expansion right around the corner in the wings, just waiting to pop out. Path of Fire is less than a month away now.
September 22nd.
Yes.
Yes.
So a lot of things going on at all times. What are your personal hallmarks out of this? 7 years of Guild Wars 2 around, well, not quite yet, but almost 7 years of Guild Wars 2 live with players. What are the hallmarks that you remember from your own writing career at ArenaNet?
Oh, yeah. So I have not worked on the expansions because I have been entirely embedded in the Living World team.
Yes.
I loved Heart of Thorns, obviously. I know a lot of people did, and we are very excited to share Path of Fire with the world. I know you all are going to love that. But primarily, I've been in Living World. I've been. It's hard to say that I've been the lead writer, but I've been the head writer on a lot of things in Living World. And probably what I would consider my magnum opus would be Season 2. I took a stronger role in Season 2 than I did in Season 3. And the whole Sylvari story is very personal to me and very,
And it went quite far in the Heart of Thorns in the end.
Yes.
Big changes for a whole race there.
Yeah, well, and that was actually in the plans from the beginning. We had always planned to do that with the Sylvari.
Okay.
So we knew that they were dragon minions from the beginning. And it took us a long time to get around to revealing that.
Yes.
But for those players who stuck around to find out, hopefully it was a big surprise and very interesting. And
At least for me, it was, yes.
yeah.
It's we had this joke with our friend group, like the Silvari are just these seedling tree huggers, but it all took kind of a dark turn with season 2 and Heart of
Yeah.
Stones. Like, okay, we might have been wrong here.
Yeah.
So the twist was interesting, at least, I believe.
And that's good. And one of the goals that we always keep in mind in ArenaNet is we want to give players fodder or tools, story tools
Yes.
to role play.
Yes.
And so giving the Silvari that sort of dark edge or
Yes.
dark background, we hope really encouraged people to role play and have fun with that.
Yeah. I believe it's, at least for us, it's worked. I can't speak for everybody,
Yeah.
of course. Do you have, out of the characters, especially in Living World seasons, do you have a personal favorite? Or-
Among the characters,
Yes.
well, everybody loves Timey. I love Timey. Other than Timey,
Okay.
I would say probably my favorite characters are Marjorie and Casimir. We made a very conscious decision
Yes.
to have them be a gay couple and to not oversell it. We
Yes.
just wanted it to be natural
Yes.
because that's what we believe.
Yes, and I think it's worked wonderfully because a lot of people are like, well, okay, they're a couple and that's that, because it's
Yeah,
never really
yeah.
brought out. It's just a thing that, well, they are.
It's
a
just
couple.
who they are.
Yes.
Yeah, which is wonderful. Yeah, and yeah, all of those iconics, Bram and Rox also.
Yes.
I love all those characters because I was part of their conception and part of their growth
Yes.
throughout. I wrote a lot of their content, and so a lot of their dialogue, and so they're all very, very
Yes.
dear to me.
What about the characters that came with the Guild Wars lore, the Destiny's Edge people from Guild Wars 1? What's it been like to
Yeah.
progress their stories as well?
Yeah.
Characters that were kind of given to you that you could take forward and to new places. What's it been like?
Yeah, those characters are great. I had nothing to do with conceiving them, obviously, because they were born long before I came onto the company.
Yes.
But they were really well conceived, and so it made it very easy and interesting to maintain their personalities and
Yes.
even evolve their stories.
Yes.
In the early days, we had part of the reason why the second set of main characters was created was because the way we were doing the game, there was a time paradox and a location paradox
Yes.
that we had to avoid. And so we thought, well, we'll just start with a new set of characters. But then we figured out how to solve that by having specific maps
Yes.
that were a moment in time.
Ah, yes.
And then we could bring these other characters back in. And that was very exciting for all of us because we got to now play with those characters as well as
Yes.
the new ones that had been created for Living World.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was, I think, must have been interesting to create those kinds of moments where you bring in old fan favorites
Oh, yeah.
to your new core group. and
Absolutely. Everybody loves Ritlock, right?
yes,
Ritlock is...
Ridley is great, and especially with his changes into Revenant, he's become
Yeah.
even more interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he's still the taciturn
Right? Yeah.
commander, but he changes even.
He does.
With him having a rather template sort of a taciturn commander character.
Yeah,
he's,
very
moved on.
military.
Yes, and it still moved on from that, so it's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, he's growing. He's growing and changing and will continue to do so.
Yes, this is what I love about Guild Wars and how it moves, because the characters move and change and everything progresses and the world changes with them.
Yeah. Well, and
So-
he's 7 years older from when we started Living World. So, you know, just
Yeah.
think about how people change in 7 years.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Okay. Personally for you, when you write the Living World chapters and events into the world, do you focus more on the events or the characters? Do you think from a player point of view or from a world point of view when you create new sets and events?
It's a balance. It's a balance. You have to think of both. And it also depends on what you're writing for.
Yes, of course.
There's something we call the golden path, which is it's basically the main through line of the story for each release.
Yes.
And those are always very character focused. But at the same time, we have to remember what's going on and what the player has to do and the combat that happens in the between,
Yes.
the dialogue and all of that. And so you have to sort of meld all of that together. And then there's everything else that's going on out in the open world or around the core story. And those are always focused on the gameplay, but then we flavor them with characters.
Yes.
And so it's really a balance, and it's a meshing, it's a melding that happens. You have to do both.
Yes.
Juggling.
Yes. Actually, concerning this, when a new storyline or a new episode is created, do you have the story first, or are there some gameplay elements that are implemented first, or is it a sort of a paired effort that everything happens at the same time with you and the game development group, or?
Sure. It seems like it happens at the same time, but it doesn't.
Okay.
We usually have the story first, at least a very broad overview of what we want to do, where we want to start, where we want to end up.
A sort of a timeline.
Yeah, and the characters' personal stories, individual stories throughout that section of time.
Yes.
And then the designers and the writers get together and we all talk about this and kind of decide, okay, what kind of gameplay would be awesome in this? And the designers who are actually going to be implementing the gameplay part of it, they're very creative and they love working with the story, and they just bring a whole new element to that side of it that supports the story and the theme and everything. And so it's a big coordinated effort. It starts with an idea of what the story will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Moving on from Guild Wars 2 and ArenaNet, you announced yesterday that you would be leaving ArenaNet.
That's right.
And starting your own company.
Yes.
So, has this been coming for a long time, or is this a recent development?
It's been coming for a while. I have been working with an indie design team for about 4 years on a game, on an IP, in our spare time, nights and weekends.
Okay.
So, and it's an international team, so we do everything on Skype. It's great. And we've been creating this game and working on world building and doing all of that.
Okay.
And what's happening now is I'm basically leaving my job, and I'm going to go full-time with Games Omniverse.
Games Omniverse.
Games Omniverse.
All right, so that's the name of your upcoming company. Or,
yes.
Okay.
That's my company.
Do you have a schedule of when you will be moving
Done? Or when I'll be leaving ArenaNet? That's
both,
already
actually.
happened.
Okay, that's happened.
Yes,
Okay.
that happened last week.
Ah, all right.
So it's still very recent. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what about your game? Or do you have a schedule that you would feel comfortable to give
It's
out?
hard to schedule because we believe we'll release it when it's done.
Yes.
And we want to make it good, and we want to make sure that it's everything people want.
Okay, this is actually the best kind of an answer to get at this point, I believe.
Yeah, good,
Okay.
great.
Yes, it's better that you make it good than to give me a date and rush it. And
Absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah. And that's something that I learned at ArenaNet. That's something that they taught me there, because even though they do have release dates, they don't announce a release date until they're absolutely sure that it's going to be done and it's going to be good.
Okay. This game that you're creating, do you have a name or anything that you can tell us at this point?
So the name of the IP is Danica Dyer.
All right.
She's the main character.
Okay.
And we're going to be releasing in chapters.
All right.
So it's going to be an ongoing story. Story is very important to us. It's sort of our primary pillar of the game and all the supporting material we're going to make for it.
Okay.
And so we want people to remember Danica Dyer, and then each chapter will have a subtitle as well.
Okay.
So
cool. Do you have any specifics that on the game? What sort of theme are you setting, or what are you going for?
So it's going to be a little bit scary, but not gory or anything like that.
Okay, so not horror.
Not really horror, just suspense, I guess, would be a good way to put it. But a lot of also adventure, because it's a puzzle adventure game.
All right.
So you play Danica, and you're going to go around and explore different dimensions, and because the story of Danica is that she's a school teacher, and her uncle died. Her last living relative died, and he left her this mansion. So she shows up at the mansion and discovers that there's a curse that comes with the mansion, and it's a responsibility to defend Earth from all the other dimensions.
Okay.
So with her, you learn about all of this, and you start to deal with the curse and figure out what's going on, and all of that, and explore.
Sort of even Lovecraftian backdrop there.
In many ways, yes.
But not so much horror, more suspense.
Right, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds
yeah.
extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Color me interested.
Yay.
All right.
We do intend to have an adult audience, by the way. It sounds on the surface like it might be for kids, but it's not. It's grown-ups.
All right.
So there'll be relationships and things like that going on.
Do you have an estimate on how many episodes you'll be going for?
As many as we can.
All right.
Yeah, I don't see it needing to stop until people lose interest in it.
Yes.
So that will basically determine how long we go, is how interested people are in it, how much we can maintain their engagement.
Okay.
So we're going to work really hard to do that.
All right. And so this is the only IP that you have for
Yes.
your new company at this point?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
Spreading
Yeah.
your net too thin here.
No,
Going
we don't
forward.
want to. We want to stay focused right
Yes.
now. That's not to say that later we wouldn't expand into something else.
Yes.
But our hope is, like an MMO, to build a big world
Yes.
with lots of different characters. That if people get bored with Danica, maybe we can
Pick up
have
somebody else.
somebody else
Yeah.
take the lead for a while and make it interesting there. So I think there's a lot of potential.
Sounds awesome.
Thank you.
I hope you get it out when it's ready.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I don't want to rush you, but it sounds so interesting that I want it now. All right.
Well, great.
Do you have any sort of an estimate? Are you trying to get it out next year or 2019?
My personal estimate is that it's going to take at least another year and a half, maybe 2
All right.
years. It depends.
So 2019,
It's very hard to
2020,
predict.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at least I myself will be watching with interest for
All
news
right.
on Games Omniverse.
Games Omniverse.
All right.
Yes.
Extremely interesting.
We have our website up, by the way. If anybody wants
Okay.
to take a look at that, it's gamesomniverse.com.
Okay. So well, we should be able to find it.
Yay.
All right. To wrap up, you've worked with games for over two decades, and hopefully
Yeah.
for at least another decade yet. But
Oh, at
what are
least.
your highlights out of all of this, all these years? What are the greatest singular events, people, things that you worked on that you,
Yeah.
when someone asks for a cool story, what's the story that you want to give?
Well, I'll tell you, releasing Guild Wars 2 was one of the major highlights of my life. The celebration was amazing, and we
Yes.
had all worked so hard. There's just nothing like it. And when you're surrounded by a team of people that you love, and everybody is proud of what they've put out, even beyond the parties. I mean, we had some great parties at that time. Parties with fans, parties with everything, with all of just the company. But even beyond that, there's just this level of happiness that goes around because you know you've created something
Yes.
wonderful, and that people are going to love it, and that they're already excited about it. And there's just no feeling like that. That's basically why you do it,
Yes.
is for that. And for the fans, because they make it all worthwhile. Without them, it's, you're just blowing smoke into the air.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've met so many fans over the years, and each and every one of them is just amazing, and the passion that you see in their eyes really ignites your own fire to just do better next time and to just
Yes.
keep going. So, yeah, that would be probably it. My first writing job also was a big monumental moment for me.
Yes, of course. It's the
Yeah.
thing that really kicks it all off.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you all the best, and
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to hearing more from Games Omniverse.
You will.
It's a shame that you're quitting with ArenaNet, but I'm sure that Guild Wars 2 will keep on going even without you.
Oh, the talented people that are there,
Yes.
they will keep rocking it, and I will keep watching them, and so, yeah, it's going to be great.
Yes, I trust it will. It was great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your weekend. And
Yeah.
we have a couple of hours left of Trackon, and you have one more show coming up. The guest of honor panel.
Yes, the panel.
With games and writing.
Yeah.
So we'll be streaming that as well. So if anybody wants to watch it, you can do it on our Trackon stream as well.
Great.
Other than that, I'll let you get back to enjoying the convention, and we are streaming the rest of the Sunday events as well, so check those out, and have a happy Trackon.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.